project to another one that is essentially the same, just a broader scope, so that the services that are expended to match up to what was agreed to with the project. The second one is within the Pandemic Relief Recovery Fund, and we just cleared out a lot of balances in completed projects and shifted it over towards this mirrored housing project, or project that you'll see in the first budget action. And the details of what those services will entail, I'll pitch to Ms. Hall.
Can I ask just a quick question about the Sister City Fountain, how that got stuffed into this?
Oh, sorry, yes, no, thank you. Sorry, that was just a convenient budget action.
You don't want to talk about
No, if you don't. That is, I don't know if, I think the council's aware, there is a fountain that was given to the city by one of our sister city organizations, and this will pay for the installation of it. And I do apologize, I forget where we are installing it.
I can
Oh,
fill
thank
in.
you.
Yeah. So this is the fountain that San Luis Potosí gave to the city several years ago, and it has been sitting in a storage shed out at the Botanical Garden for years. So as we work with our sister cities, we encourage, to exchange gifts. This gift, it is huge. So it's been sitting there for years and has not been put together. And with all the visitors that have been coming in, it's kind of embarrassing not to be able to showcase it.
So it'll be installed at the Botanic Garden?
Yes.
Okay, and it was already accepted by a former council?
Yes.
So, thanks for explaining that one.
Yep.
The rest of them make sense being grouped together. I did want to acknowledge that we have Attorney Caroline Wolf with us today from City Legal, in case anyone was wondering. That's not Jack Blair. He's out. And we have Emily Hall, the Mayor's Senior Advisor on Homelessness, with us to talk about item 4 and 5.
Great, thank you, Councilor. I do have, there is a deck, so just going to go through this. Just want to ground our conversation today in some terminology that we'll be discussing. And you can read that, but decommissioning is the coordinated permanent closure and clearing of an area in collaboration with partner providers that connects individuals in encampments and on the street to shelter services and or housing. I do want to call, I'm not going to go through and read all these, but I just want to call out a couple specific words. I will use the word and you will see people. People means individuals and families. You will also see supportive housing, or we'll talk about supportive housing. That is providing access to safe and stable housing to support individuals who had some sort of substance abuse issue, and as they begin their path to sustain a long-term recovery. As well as a key piece of what we're going to talk about is an individualized needs plan. This is really support services that are tailored to the specific individual or family. And in what we'll be talking about, we'll be utilizing a way home for Tulsa partners and other necessary service providers. So,
just the arrow.
So decommissioning has been a topic of conversation and multiple recommendations over the course of the last couple of years. This has included the 3H task force, Path to Home, our most recent mayor council retreat, and the mayor's priority to reaching functional zero homelessness by 2030. And as we discussed today, the reallocation of opioid dollars to use along with pandemic recovery fund dollars and ARPA dollars, we're going to discuss launching a rehousing and decommissioning strategy through an initiative called Safe Move Tulsa. And as we talk about through this conversation, our 2025 point in time count showed an increase in homelessness in Tulsa. The city has available funds to move quickly in addressing this. We can make immediate difference by beginning to rehouse some of our unhoused and sheltered community members. So I do want to point out, however, even with a shift in use of these opioid dollars from the residential care center to Safe Move Tulsa initiative, the residential care center or property will still play a very important role in all of this work. It can remain permanent housing at a deeply affordable rate that meets a need across our community. And that's, again, 59 units that will be available for housing. So, Safe Move Tulsa consists of core components that provide supportive housing, that connects people to supportive services tailored to the individual or family needs. This includes jobs, financial resources. It secures housing as quickly as possible. These individualized needs plans can include also financial literacy, healthcare, transportation, mental health, substance abuse services, along with housing assistance, support from family and friends, and education support, just to name a few. Again, the key piece is that these are individualized plans based on the need of the individual and family. And what this shows is what this would look like. An individual or family is identified through service providers within our continuum of care, Way Home for Tulsa. An individual needs plan is created, housing is identified. As they move through this process, there's benchmarks in place, and the goal is within a 12-month period of time, they are able to maintain rent. Now, knowing that maybe some wraparound support services continue after that, but within a 12-month period of time, they're able to maintain rent. So who might this program serve? These are just a couple examples. John is a 52-year-old man who spends his nights in a shelter. He works a minimum wage job during the day. He cannot afford rent plus medical bills. He's recovering from an opioid disorder. What he needs is housing assistance for a short period of time, financial literacy support, healthcare access, transportation access, ongoing recovery services, and mental health access. Leah is a 41-year-old woman. She's just fallen into homelessness. The shelters are full at capacity, so the last resort is sleeping on the street. She left an unsafe home life, and she's currently unemployed. So she needs housing assistance for 12 months. Job and career navigation, mental health services, healthcare access, transportation access. The key with Leah is she's just fallen into homelessness, and so with this program, we can have the ability to catch her before she stays in that unsheltered spot for much longer. The third profile is a family, and the father has been laid off. The mother works. They are currently in a hotel, and they're in need of permanent housing and some housing assistance, childcare, some job and career navigation, mental health services, financial literacy services. And I do want to highlight that in each of these profiles, they're all going to be assessed for what are their at-risk conditions, current and future. The longer they're staying in the positions that they're in, their risk for increased, they are at an increased risk for additional needs and supports. So, rehousing initiatives like Safe Move Tulsa are based off national best practices. They're connecting individuals and families experiencing homelessness to supportive housing through individualized needs plans, and with a focus on long-term stability and preventing returns to homelessness. This is a $6 million investment, again, reallocating what we're currently talking about, opioid dollars, along with the Pandemic Relief Recovery Fund dollars and ARPA dollars to rehouse approximately 300 people, which includes both individuals and families. this walks us through our current situation. We have 1,449 Tulsans who were considered homeless in the January 2025 point in time count. Our shelters, so just to break that down even further, we have 953 in shelters, we have 469 who are unsheltered. There is congestion in our shelters. Our shelters are at 100% capacity, which means if someone has no other place to go, they are falling into street homelessness. That creates congestion on the street. Financial resources are limited for rehousing right now. There's fewer vouchers that are available, and with fewer dollars available as well, it is making rehousing and creating movement out of shelters and off the street a challenge. So the goal of Safe Move Tulsa is to house 100 to 150 unsheltered individuals and families through rehousing, and to house 150 and 200 sheltered individuals and families through rehousing. So by moving folks out of the shelter into housing, we begin to unlock shelter space and are then able to begin decommissioning areas across our city and have a stronger focus on providing supports for our most chronic homeless individuals and getting them out of encampments and off our streets and into shelters or other sort of identified location that might be best for them, and then on a pathway to permanent housing. So I just want to finish with, we have several of our service providers, members of Away Home for Tulsa, in the room, and they are doing this work that we're talking about now. But what we have the ability to do is to only make their work much more impactful and to quickly house more folks. I'm going to pass around, this is a letter from some of our service providers. So I will just pass that around. Again, just to reiterate, this budget amendment, along with other funds, creates an immediate $6 million investment that we can start very soon to get people off the street, out of a shelter, and into housing.
Do you have any extras of these at the end of your?
Oh, it did?
We'll share it.
There should have been.
Are you ready for council discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll make some more copies of that. So, thank you for the presentation. Just full disclosure, Councilor Lakin, Gilbert, Bellis, and I received this presentation last week in our working group. So, I'm sure we have more questions, but I also want to acknowledge that we have colleagues who are seeing this for the first time. So, are there any questions or comments from those of you that didn't get a chance last week? Councilor Dutton.
So I'm wondering about the infrastructure aspect of it. Are there specific designated infrastructure already in place, and where would that be located as to how we're going to be able to house the number of people, the 300? And then would the priority be for those in the shelters first, and what would the criteria be for that? Would they first, the priorities be families, working families, and then would it shift to females? I'm just wondering what that looks like going forward. And I know that we had mentioned people with vehicles. I mean, do they even have the capacity to pay the insurance and have their tags? I'm just trying to think of all the aspects that people that are unsheltered would face that may be living out of, say, the day center or Salvation Army.
So, if I'm going to go back to question one, but if I forget as we go along, just remind me. So, the infrastructure, what we're looking at are scattered available sites. These are just apartment units across our city. And we do know that we have enough units available to meet this goal. It's not building infrastructure. There's no component like that. It is scattered sites that are available. And our partners from Way Home for Tulsa Housing Solutions works closely with keeping and identifying those locations.
Would those be parsed out through the city?
Those sites are all across, they're scattered, so it could mean maybe there's 2 or 3 in one location at a apartment, maybe 1 or 2 in another location. They're scattered. There will be a little bit of both occurring at the same time. I think that we will be working with Housing Solutions and partners to determine what that looks like. We do know that in order to begin decommissioning, moving folks off the street, we have to clear shelter space, but some of that can go simultaneously. The transportation, were you referring to where it says needs transportation services?
No, people with vehicles that may be living out of their
Sure.
vehicles that are not in the shelter specifically, or people that, the example was the woman that had a vehicle, her husband was laid off. How does that, I guess I'm concerned about how that looks and being able to maintain that vehicle outside of the housing situation. Is there a partnership or any kind of process to go forward to help people that actually do have vehicles so they can keep that, so that they can continue to work?
If it's okay, Mark, do you have are there partners that work currently?
Yeah, sure.
Can you come to the table?
Yes. Happy to come up. Maybe that, is it okay if that's Jared Boyle for Tulsa joins me?
Plenty of room at the table.
Yeah.
Will you do like official introductions?
Yes. I'm Mark Smith. I'm CEO at Housing Solutions. We're the lead agency for Way Home for Tulsa.
Beth Edwards-Sputlik, the Assistant Executive Director with Youth Services of Tulsa, but the current chair of Way Home for Tulsa Leadership Council.
Thank you.
So, and I think that as someone who's been a practitioner for a lot longer than me can talk a little bit more, but this is about the individual plan for each person. So having the ability to address whatever their individual needs. So a person who has a vehicle, part of the challenge in order to get back into housing may be it may need to have some small repair, or it may be that they just can't afford the first month's rent and security deposit to move back into housing, but their vehicle is functioning, they're still getting to work. So part of what partner providers will do will work with the individuals who we've identified with short-term assistance can be sustainable. And we already have an active list of about 1,200 people that are waiting for short-term assistance to housing. And then the individual caseworker will build that plan and what supports are needed to help them. So that can be identifying a unit. For some folks, it may be, repairing a relationship, roommates, family members. That's the most sustainable option for them long-term as opposed to moving in a unit. But it's going to be individualized, it's going to be client-driven, and it's going to be all options on the table. So,
And I think you've identified a need that comes up frequently is a gap in being able to, if you have a car, that's really awesome and helpful in the city of Tulsa, but helping to pay for things like repairs or something on that car can be challenging. So there are service providers, partners within Way Home for Tulsa that do have some car repair services. Catholic Charities is one of those partners. But then also, typically what we will build in as far as, some flexible funds to help fill those gaps that, maybe aren't typical or, are creating a barrier for those families to be sustainable and live in that permanent housing. One of the challenges with some other funds is there's limitations on what those flexibilities could be. I would say probably an opportunity with this might be to build in some of those things that are gaps in other funding sources. Obviously it can be unlimited, but sometimes, building in a max of $200 that could go towards transportation need. I know for us at Youth Services of Tulsa, a lot of times that looks like purchasing a bicycle that helps get a young person back and forth to work or something like that. So I think that's how we would ideally do that, and the beauty of kind of, developing a program like this with some city dollars is maybe being able to really build in some flexibilities to individualize that to each person.
Yeah, so I'm concerned, I guess, the insurance aspect of it, because you can't get your tags without insurance.
Sure.
So I think that's a huge hindrance when you're trying to go forward. And at minimum wage, 25 an hour, they're gonna have to work 3 weeks to afford a premium. And so I think that aspect needs to be baked in to that assistance so that they can maintain the tag, maintain their insurance, and still be contributing members
Sure.
in the community.
I think what this is focusing on, like if we can take care of, hey, we're gonna help supplement rent, we're gonna get you in, and we're gonna take care of that piece, then they can use their income for things like, okay, then I can get ahead, I can go ahead and pay that premium and get that going, because this part's taken care of. And then, then I can get to work, and get a paycheck that's, coming regularly and be able to kind of then sustain.
That's part of what the Financial Literacy Empowerment Center does, is help people strategize how to maximize their resources. I have Counselor Archie next.
Sure. Thank you for this.
Counselor Bellis, I'm going to let the other ones go first, and then we'll.
Thanks. A few questions. One for Director Hall. You talked about the residential care center being kind of transitioning the mission from transitional housing to affordable housing now. Is that more of what?
Well, it's currently zoned for permanent for housing in general, and the developer has to utilize it for deeply affordable units that fits and fills a need that we have across our city. So it provides housing resources. We are actually getting the ability out of this, to house people as well as utilize it for permanent housing now.
So I'm just imagining that space in North Tulsa, people just living there, subsidized rent, but living there, they'll kind of be their forever home if they desire to be there.
Yeah, it is. They are individual units within that facility.
Okay. And the six.
Just like apartments, individual apartments within inside that facility.
So money's been taken away from that, potentially for this. How is that project going to be? Like, what's the status of that project then? Like the timeline or anything like that?
The residential care center. That project, as it has been identified as a transitional living center, would not be a transitional living center anymore, because dollars would be utilized for this. It would still be, the developer is still on a path to finish completion of the housing unit, and then it would become available for just regular permanent housing.
Okay. I was reading through some of the background. It says that it says funds shall be used for, but are not limited to, moving costs, paying utilities, clearing arrears, which I'm assuming like that, maybe back rent, groceries and case management. It says not limited to. And maybe you talk about like car repairs, but like who in Away at Home for Tulsa gets the discretion as to decide how this money is used? Like remember last week we talked about, I think Councilor Gilbert was talking about who gets to make the decision. We talked about our animal services. Who in the organization gets to make the decision about when money is spent or when discounts are getting given? Who gets to make that discretionary? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll jump in and answer that. So that is part of what we would do through a contracting phase. We haven't gotten there yet. This is just step one in introducing this conversation. But the city would work with in the next step of whatever that looks like. But as those contracts are initiated.
We have state statutes that put big bumper rails on what municipal dollars can go for, so.
And also,
There's not even a ton of discretion just in the administration, like we still have to check against state allowances for municipal dollars.
oh, good. Well, no, it's good because people will ask, it's a lot of money, so how do we use it to the best of our ability, maximize it, if it goes through. I am looking. This was uploaded last minute, so I did not have it in my document. So I'm looking. I feel like when it comes to the individuals that we identify in the shelters, we're giving them a runway. You come out of the shelter, we'll find you employment or give you services, and then subsidize you for 6 months or a year, and then the desire is after that year you can be self-sustaining, and you're out of sort of the orbit of these resources. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, what we're talking about is they're able to maintain rent on their own at month 12. Some individuals at month 3 may be able to maintain rent. We do know that some of those service providers will continue working with individuals after the 12 months. And I'm sure that you can speak to that you may have some folks who see their, family and children's is here, see their mental health service provider for many years after they're self-sustainable. So that's part of that individualized plan into being able to maintain rent.
There's a great amount of variability we see in these types of programs. For some folks, it's I am working, is the example there, I have income, but if average rent in Tulsa is about $1,000, most people need between $2,000 to $3,000 up front with first month's rent, security, deposit, utilities. But that $2,500 is the only barrier for someone. For other folks, it's going to be employment, mental health, substance abuse, getting kids enrolled in school, and so just having the ability to create that plan of what they need, but the goal will be that at 12 months people will be sustainable on their own.
And that 12 months is tied to some pretty extensive evidence-based practice that's like a good middle ground of when people can typically become sustainable on their own.
Right.
Counselor Bush or Counselor Bangle, I wanted to put you guys at the front of the line if you have questions, otherwise.
I do.
Okay. Counselor Bangle.
Yeah, so I'm not against the use of discretionary funding in these needs. One of the questions that I have is, are there any administrative costs associated to these funds? And what does that percentage look like?
That would
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah, yes, there are. It's not on, so ARPA funds, and Reese can correct me, we held back a portion of those just for our ARPA grants compliance on our end of this. But I think administration of the program, with our actual contractors or subcontractors, that would be part of the contract negotiation that Emily is talking about that hasn't occurred yet because the funds aren't appropriated yet.
Okay. So you and I have had a discussion just casually that some folks are like one paycheck away from being unhoused. And some of this can be, I think since we've seen an uptick in our seniors, and I see nearly on a weekly basis where seniors are having trouble making utility payments. And then we've just bumped the utility rates. So my question is that even though this is focused specifically on the unhoused, are you also looking at potential of folks who may be in that scenario where they're one utility payment away from being unhoused?
Separately from this.
Because we don't want to trade
Right.
off getting one off the
Right.
street to put somebody else in that place.
Yeah, separately from this, absolutely. It has to be a piece of the bigger picture. And I think that when we talk about functional zero homelessness, we know that there's always going to be folks that fall into homelessness. But that means that it's rare, brief, and non-recurring, that those sort of diversions are in place, those resources are in place and ready to bring that person back out of homelessness or be able to catch them prior to going into homelessness. So that is a separate piece of all of this work,
Okay.
absolutely.
And then the folks that are in these two programs, the 6 and 12 month, is there continual case management to make sure they don't fall within that cycle again?
So just clarification, there's not two programs. Those were just examples of someone may only need 6 months of support, someone may need up to 12
Okay.
months of support. The goal is that the resource is available for up to 12 months if
okay.
needed. There is ongoing part of the benchmark, part of that individualized plan is ongoing support to ensure that when they hit that 12 month, that they're able to maintain. But past that, many folks stay with case management. Can you, Mark, speak to that, or?
Yeah, so the goal is that sort of this rehousing case management and that financial support will end at 12 months, but part of the work of what Away Home for Tulsa does is like Medicaid enrollment, and if someone needs mental health, behavioral health, substance abuse, physical health care services, that is already ongoing. So we have great partnerships. We're very lucky that we have organizations like Family Children's, Grand, other CCBHCs that can do Medicaid enrollment at the beginning or even through street outreach. And so that's sort of a joint project that those services are eligible for as long as people need that, and that can go beyond just this really rehousing focus. And so we do typically see that a lot of folks, once they have the stability of being back in housing, that engaging with mental health, substance abuse, even like again financial empowerment, most folks do stay with those programs. And then part of this is having a system where if those individuals fall into crisis again and they're going to fall back into homelessness, that we have a homeless response system that has services that can help them. You know, they can call the day center, they can call these services, and there will be somebody there who can help.
And that's before they fall back into that state.
Yeah, one of our goals is that the people who are rehoused do not then return to homelessness for this specific program.
I mean, a key piece is sustainable housing
Okay.
And that's
and
kind of
supportive housing.
that individualized plan, that's the focus from the get, is how do we get them to a place, not just the 12 months, but that
Right.
they're connected, supported, so that they
They're
can
stable.
maintain.
They're in a
Yeah.
stable state. So I appreciate that. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thinking about the scenario you shared, Counselor, so there are resources at the hub that would help those individuals who are like slipping. I think also we have started looking at water bills that get in arrears as an early warning sign so that we can also try to connect people to services. But Counselor Bellis and I and others are also working on some eviction mitigation, which would, when you lose your utilities, the next step is eviction. So I'm glad that you surfaced that, and that was definitely another piece of the path to home that we, from a policy
Yeah, and
standpoint, have been talking
I
about.
brought up the utility piece.
Yeah.
Actually, that was
That
a lot of
some-
lighting.
But I think the TMUA is entertaining kind of some of the things, the same program that I think PSO has, helping their neighbors, like rounding up their utility bill. So hopefully we're approaching that, not from a passive, but an aggressive attempt to help our neighbors.
Right, like,
So-
I think all of us agree, like, keeping people from falling
Yep.
to the bottom is less traumatic and less expensive to help mitigate. I have,
I think the rising seniors is what's
Yeah.
alarming.
next on the list, I have Counselor Bellis, then myself, then we'll go back to Dot and then RT, and then others want to jump in.
I'm personally excited about this step because it's doubling down on already successful solutions that we already have people who like the service providers who are expert in doing this that are able to scale. I know that was a question I initially had when I first heard that we were looking at kind of shifting the focus of these dollars was, okay, is this something providers are ready to scale? And the answer that I've been hearing is like, absolutely, we know what we're doing. So to me, I'm just listening to my colleagues, like that's something I have a lot of faith in, is that the experts who've been doing this direct service are like, we already do this, we know what this looks like, we know who the community we serve, like we know who those people are, so we're ready to go, we just need the investment and support. So I think that's really exciting. Just two quick like clarifying questions, and then like one or two more just like sentiments. One is, you mentioned, right, okay, there's about 300 units that we're seeking. Do we need all those to be available concurrently for this to be successful?
No.
No.
We're looking at this over a 9-month span of time. A 9-month span of time to house 300 people, but providing them services for up to 12 months of
So,
time.
and how many units have we already identified about?
We haven't even,
Okay.
I know that Housing Solutions is very much on top of that. There are units, there are 300 units available today. If we were able to say 300 people are moving into scattered site units, those are available today. But it will take time to move folks in.
I do know, this is a conversation I've had with, I'm looking at it, with Julie at the YWCA, that a challenge can be when someone's been really immersed in community and culture in one space, and then you're moving them into, for instance, a scattered site, that then they're disconnected from that community or miss that culture that they've been a part of in whatever setting that they've been kind of living in. I was just curious from the service providers how it looks like to support people in that, because I know that could be a real challenge when we're talking about scattered, right? I know sometimes in the past we've looked at things like getting folks into more concentrated areas, or like a hotel that's been renovated, or this or that. Granted, I'm also excited that we're looking at existing units, because obviously we all know how long it takes to build something new, let alone like zone or permit, and we know there's other upstream challenges there. But I'm just curious, how do you all mitigate that challenge? Because it is, if we're talking about scattered sites, which I think that's great that there's existing places, and it's not like we're talking about anywhere super far. Tulsa doesn't have long commute times per se in like the MSA. But what does that look like for you all if people are, especially, and also for your service provider, like for social workers to get to all those different sites as well and help support? I'm just curious about feasibility of all of that.
Sure. I think part of the model is where possible, you're working alongside that individual to find a unit that's maybe in the area that they are used to living in. So that's not always entirely possible, but that's the goal, is to kind of start there and try to, find a unit that's in a community that they're familiar with. But also that's part of that individualized needs plan, is identifying who is your natural support system, what is community for you, and how can we ensure that we're putting things in place to maintain that community. Another big part of it is, for some, they don't have something identified as community. Always a part of that initial needs plan is community and connection. As far as the caseworkers and getting to all the locations, I think any housing case manager right now will tell you, like, summer is so hot because you're out going to all the places. But that's the gig, and that's part of the job, and that's kind of built into cost of doing the work and making sure that they have transportation and mileage or whatever to get to all those locations, and meeting individuals where they are to make sure that they're able to access those services is a big part of the work.
And then, out of curiosity, do we have one of those this is something we discussed last week to my other council colleagues, like something around, hey, when we invest upstream in this type of solution, like for every dollar we put in, it saves X amount of like dollars down the line. Because we know like homelessness in our housing crisis is an expensive issue for private business owners, for the city, for public safety officers. I just wasn't sure if we have that kind of, for every dollar in, it saves you this much, like to the taxpayer.
We don't. We're working on that, gathering especially specific dollars to the city. I mean, we know, and this goes back to an assessment that was done in 2021, the cost for the city to book someone and for a person to spend one night in jail, in a municipal jail, is over $600. That's 4-year-old data, so we know like that's very expensive. Our average cost, and it depends on shelter and services, can be about $88 a night for a bed. So when we look at average cost to house somebody for 12 months versus cost of shelter, cost of if there's justice involvement, especially for minor offenses like trespassing or setting up an abode, and then not to mention public sanitation costs, because people don't have a space to clean up after themselves and express good hygiene. The cost savings are significant. So I would love to work with different city finance to look at some of that, but we know just when we look at justice involvement and like emergency shelter bed, getting people housed and sustainable is a much more cost-effective option. And then, of course, the benefits to the economy of having people re-enter the workforce, children being able to regularly go to school, and how we see positive impact on educational attainment. There's a lot downstream of that.
I just want to voice to my council colleagues related to this as a solution, because I know, like, I think this is something we can actually concretely deliver on because there's already that legacy of work. And it's something where we can build up good community will to actually get, future investment from like public-private sector, et cetera, by, it's like us investing in something that we know can be successful and make a meaningful difference pretty tangibly. I've just been thinking a lot about, my career's been working in public education and public health, and you see a lot of both over-admiring a problem and then not taking a next step, or looking for that next shiny solution when there's already something that works that's sitting there and you're don't have the attention span to just double down on something successful. So I just hope we can all like double down on something successful together. Of course, I hope we can figure out a cadence of kind of getting that, hey, this is what this looks like. And I know you all may have to make pivots and adjustments, if, to the service provider community, acknowledging that I don't know what percent of these dollars it looks like for case managers versus direct like payments for rent, or I think that's like a formula that I'd be really curious about, or I'm sure we all are, to better understand. So I don't know if we can make sure there's like a cadence of once the contracts are in place of starting kind of reporting back both of literal people served, but also of that kind of percent of like this percent of dollars ended up hiring this many people to provide the case management versus this percent of the dollars helped with arrears versus helped with rental assistance payments, or I think that would be really great.
And Councilor, cities like Dallas and Houston are doing this sort of work right now, and seeing great success of rehousing folks with an individualized plan.
I have some questions. Number one, previously allocated opioid housing assistance. Where was it previously allocated? I understand that where the ARPA dollars were.
The residential care center?
To the residential care center, okay. So I just want to say something about those 59 units, because I was in the town hall meeting where we promised the neighbors that the wraparound services portion of that was a big component. And so I really do want to level set that yes, 59 affordable units will be there, but they will not have the transportation, the casework, and all those things that we were talking to the residents about during the zoning. And Councilor Hall Harper couldn't be here, but she and I were in that meeting along with Sarah Davis, Travis Holes, Daniel was obviously there. And so, yes, there'll be affordable units, but it's pretty isolated. There's not a lot of services. There's not a lot of public transportation. There's not a grocery store. And so I just really want to name that. Going back to what Councilor Archer was talking about. These are one-time funds, so it's kind of a pilot program to see how it goes. Is there any plans now of how we reinfuse the dollars? Or we're not there yet?
We're not there yet. These are one-time dollars, and we hope that as we get going that we'll have additional dollars to be able to continue housing more folks. Councilor, if you, just to the residential care center and the support services as it moves forward, just regular housing. Actually, I've been engaging Away Home for Tulsa and the property owner on what it would look like to continue on in a different fashion and being able to have some support services for whomever may move into their center.
That's new information. Thank you. The financial literacy piece, so we're talking about 300 households. Are these budgeted for in the current FEC budget? Because we had those folks in front of us not too long ago during the budget talks about what their capacities were. Or is the financial literacy piece not through the FEC for these clients?
They're through Away Home for Tulsa partners, and it could potentially even be through that, but right now we're looking at Away Home for Tulsa partners.
Okay. Let's talk about the inventory. It's a surprise to me. I'm probably one of the people at this table that has been really focused on housing and homelessness, at least since 2018. More than most that sit up here, if I dare say. And I've been told for years that we're at 97% capacity. We don't have enough units. So it's very surprising me to hear that right now we have 300 units open and ready as long as we get first, last, and deposit. What has changed?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. And 300 units like today, that would be pretty hard to find. 300 units over 9 months, I think, is more doable. We have seen, and quite frankly, I think this might be short-term, and so we may have a limited window of opportunity here, but with higher interest rates, economic uncertainty, that occupancy rates have slightly declined in Tulsa over the last year. Now, the housing market can shift, right? The interest rates could drop. That could open up a lot more people who are going from living with roommates to living on their own, or people who are buying homes. But we have seen a slight softening in occupancy rates over the last couple of months. The challenge that still remains is that in order to rent an apartment right now, the average effective rent across the Tulsa metro area the cost has increased by 40% since the end of 2018. So to rent an apartment, just an average apartment in Tulsa, was a little over $700 at the end of 2018. Now it's over $1,000, between $1,030 and $1,040 a month. And just we haven't seen people's income. So the need for additional units and additional affordable units is still incredibly dire. But when we're talking about finding units for 300 people over a 9-month period, it's just not the same that it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we're talking about like a smidgen of space in a very large market. In terms of addressing our broader affordability challenges, there's still significant need there.
Thank you. The last two questions center on childcare and pet-friendly placements, because we know those are barriers. You talked about the scenario with the family, they need childcare. We're in a childcare desert, and so what does that look like? Do we have a Way Home for Tulsa partners, or somebody that's coming on with more childcare availability?
So that's something that we would work with the Way Home for Tulsa. But when talk about other resources out there, have to look beyond. And it's going to really depend on what exactly childcare means to that family.
Okay. And then for pet-friendly units?
Gotta find them. That's it. We do find them. They are out there. We just have to go and find them and make them work. And again, this is part of where we may not find the ideal or the perfect for an individual. Someone may have to choose between like living in their ideal neighborhood or unit versus like a unit that will work with their pets. It's the decision that we all have to make. But there are some that are available.
And is there anyone in the city or in the nonprofit space that's specifically going out to property owners negotiating these needs? Because I think we had a little bit of that going on, and we're going to hire like somebody to do that. I don't know that actually ever happened.
Yeah, so actually we're exploring what master leasing might look like. I know that there's some organizations like Day Center that are already engaging in master lease agreements, and that's been very successful for other cities. And so we're definitely looking at how that would impact this work.
I would say to our colleagues who are looking at how to help appropriate the $75 million, if we know that we need units that have childcare near or in, if we know that there's pet-friendly housing needs, like we should incentivize that with the public dollars that we've already, said that we want to use to grow the inventory. So I would just throw that out there, and maybe, I know Councilor Bellis is kind of taking the lead on the childcare issue, but maybe even our economic development incentives, if there's a company that's coming that wants to have on-site childcare, things like that. I think we should use that because we know the needs are there. My concern has always been in our desire to solve this problem, which I think we're all desperately wanting to do. We sometimes focus on the numbers and not the people, so I'm very glad for these scenarios. I don't know if they were like actual real scenarios or whatever, but I think the more we can humanize who our neighbors are that are going through this, even the ones that are trying to not fall into homelessness, right? We certainly hear from them as constituents. I just hope that we also don't get too rose-colored glasses about the units available. I think there's a lot of one-bedrooms and studios. That's not going to help a family. And we just need to be real about set realistic expectations. This will be a huge leap forward. I think we hear that. But I also don't think in 12 months we're going to see necessarily everything that we're planning to do come to fruition, because we're going to find those barriers. We can't control things beyond our control, like the economy, the market. We're still at a $7.25 minimum wage. There's been cuts to healthcare and things beyond our control. And so as people are contacting us about what policies and procedures and efforts we're making, I hope they're also reaching out to their elected officials at every level that also impact this situation. I have Dutton for a follow-up and Archie for a follow-up. I just wanted to check in with Councilor Bush or Councilor Lakin or Councilor Gilbert that we're not. Okay. Councilor Dutton, then Councilor Archie.
I wanted to say thank you, Councilor Bengal, for bringing up the administrative cost question, because that was something I had also thought about, what that looked like per person, really. And I was also wondering, we're talking about teams to individualize a needs plan. What does that look like? I mean, how many people are we talking to a team per individual? And what that would incur, that would also play into the administrative cost, and is that sustainable?
Sure.
We'll have to work through all of that sort of stuff as we work through contracts, but what we do know from service providers is that they do this work now, and they have the ability as this ramps up to take additional caseloads.
So I'm wondering if it would be like 3, 4, 5 people per team, per individual.
Yeah, I think it would depend on that individualized plan. So like one of the examples I mentioned, he's recovering from opioid use disorder. So that individualized plan would probably include a connection to substance and behavioral health services. So that's someone that would be a part of that team. So it would depend, and we already do that on a current basis. Someone will have a housing caseworker that's working on their housing, but the behavioral health services is coming through one of our community partners. Whether or not that needs to be contracted sometimes depends. The employment services, does that need to be a staff person, or could that be a community partner? So that will depend.
Are you speaking more to like caseload size? Like how many individuals one case manager may be serving?
Well, I'm just, in a way, but I mean, I'm just thinking more like, we have our PAC teams here for the
Sure.
mental health, and so,
Yeah.
there's so many people designated to specific individuals based on their needs and whatnot. So I'm just thinking in terms of the actual staffing, do we have enough on site? And I'm also, now that you say that, thinking of the day center, would they utilize their staffing also to continue, say you move somebody out of the day center, would the caseworker that might be there, the case manager, would they follow that individual out, or is that passed on to the team?
And like Emily said, I'm sure that'll be outlined in
Right.
contracting, but best
Yeah.
practices around that.
Okay.
And, providers knowing how to kind of weight those depending on the need.
And then I have one more follow-up on the apartment complexes. Are we vetting the owners of these complexes, or vetting any kind of historical data indicating eviction rates, and so that we don't have any repeats of
Violations.
of Vista, Shadow, and that's concerning to me. Those sort of violations, and I think this is great. I just would hate for the money to go towards something that ends up putting out more people than people that were placed.
I'm going to jump in there. When Councilor Bingle was asking kind of about what resources before people fall into homelessness, the mayor's going to be launching soon this eviction mitigation council. And part of that work is bringing landlords to the table, as well as part of this work is, and I believe that Housing Solutions already has a navigation team that is working very closely with landlords. So you're incentivizing landlords who are the ones that you want to, that are partners in the work, want to be partners in the work, incentivizing them to be at the table and be a part of providing housing units.
I'll stay in touch with you an email to follow up on any further questions I might have. That way we won't take up any more time.
It's okay, I mean, this is the time we have. So, Councilor Archie, I do want to say, if we approve these dollars, obviously it'll be an RFP process. I think there's some counselors who have less experience or just have not had to go through that. So I think if we need to revisit the criteria, we can. And I also did want to say, we don't vote on the second reading. It's the 20th. There's no emergency clause. So we don't meet next week, but if any of you get like a plethora of questions, we could always put it back on for discussion on the 20th on either UED or Public Works. So I'm going to go to Archie, and then I think we need to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So the initiative's goal is 150 that are currently on the street into shelters, 200 that are in shelters into solid housing. So if the goal is 150, do you go after twice that many or three? I mean, of course, 100% of the folks that we go after are not going to, stay with us. Or is it that you are trying to identify the top, who in our system that we made contact with is the most likely to succeed? Let's focus our energy on those folks and try to shepherd them through the process, understanding that we may have a 20 or 30%, attrition rate. How are you all kind of looking at that?
So just what we're looking at the goals, that's why there's a range of between 150 to 200 folks out of the shelter, and 100 to 150 off of the street straight into housing. And what there will be characteristics of who will be able to be rehoused. And what that does then is for those that are more chronically homeless that need longer term supports, there will be shelter space that will open up, and our providers can provide more support, intentional support, and get those folks off of the street and into shelter or whatever the next step might be on to a path to permanent housing. There are certain, at the end of the day, folks have to be able to maintain rent within a 12-month period. And so that's going to be a key piece of who is going to be ready to move.
And then finally, we don't have to discuss it now, but I'm curious what our police and fire and IMSA, maybe some of their feedback as they review the initiative as well. I mean, we don't have to talk about it now, but they're on the front lines as well, dealing with these challenges. So definitely want to collaborate more with our heroes.
They are part of the team, and actually Chief Wilmerhauser is in many conversations about how do we bring public safety as well as Commissioner Roberts into this work.
I think we have to move on from here. Obviously, a lot of interest in the room and at the table. Not every colleague here has had the time to do the deep dive, so I would encourage you that have questions, get your aides to set up some meetings. If we need to put it back on the agenda, just make sure that you do the request to Lori and Sarah by the 14th, noon on the 14th, and then we can put it back on if we need to. The vote will be on the 20th. That will be second reading, and we will take public comment. And obviously, you can always contact us by email or however you reach out to your counselor. Thank you to Emily and to Jared and to the partners and everyone here. I did just want to emphasize something that Counselor Bella said. The 150 to 200 is additive to what all these folks are doing every day right now. And it's to get us closer to getting these 1,500 individuals move through. And as Emily said, there probably always will be a circumstance that causes someone to slip through, but once we get every part of the continuum moving better, it's, rare, brief, and non-recurring. So that is the goal, and I know you all have been asking for a long time for us to kind of step on the gas a little bit, so I'm glad that we have put our heads together to look at the dollars we do have for today and go. I'm a little bit questioning why we don't have the emergency clause, but
that was going to actually be my question. Where
Budget amendments don't be emergency clauses.
To go
They
into
go
effect
into
sooner.
effect
Okay.
as soon as the mayor signs it.
okay, thank you for that. All right, that's items number 4 and 5. Thank you. We're going to go to item 6. Still remembering that 3 is hanging out, and I don't know if TMAPC has moved on. Sarah, are we good with the TMAPC?
Yeah, I think they still are not
Okay.
here, so yes, go on.
All right, we're on item 6, ordinance amending the fiscal year 25-26 budget to make supplemental appropriations of $223,546.75, recognized from revenues received within the Convention and Visitors Fund for managed entities. Jared.
Equally exciting. This is tourism and marketing. This is the Convention Visitors Fund. This is FY25 lodging taxes performed greater than our initial estimate. As part of their FY25 contract, the provider is
on it for you. Check, check. You just want me to record it for you? Check, check. That way you don't have to worry about it, and I'll give you my card. Check, 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 check. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, she's still set up, or?
I mean, I'm gonna record it for you, so I mean,
Okay.
that way I'll roll on it. That way you just hold the mic close to him, okay?
All right.
I didn't bring a law.
I did not either.
I did not.
I'm just glad I'm not alone on that.
Yeah. I'm slacking today. Any batteries?
No, no. I just will use.
Oh, you got batteries, okay.
I just don't have to hold it.
Should broke off the mile and all, too. No, I have both sides of the table recording.
Check. That's not very loud. 1, 2, all right.
Siblings.
Mess with batteries.
Batteries.
Yeah, dude, that's one thing. There are things eat batteries so bad.
Or you got the newer ones or the old 790s? You can see.
No, it's just.
It's the old cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, just-
This thing, man, these are very fast.
Yeah.
My little packs, I maybe get a half a day out of them.
Right.
The big pack, I get like 2 days.
Are you not putting your camera here? You just go on his? Okay. I can scoot over a little bit then.
And I'm streaming this back, so mind your P's and Q's. I am hot, so we may be on the web. Just a little friendly reminder.
Well, you know, I'm one hot mic away from not seeing y'all again. So. Every day, it's a game I like to play.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game.
Keeps the
Tell
blood
you
flowing.
about the story about me and Charles Ely talking crap about Leanne Taylor one day. It went almost live across. Thank God we were talking about football. Arkansas and OU. There was a moment we were talking about.
That's a pretty
And
close call.
It was, you know, it was like literally the director at the time calling. Why were you guys talking about Arkansas and OU? I'm like, how much? It was like 10 seconds earlier.
Okay.
Because Charles was telling me all the old stories.
I've got there's like one phrase that I'm waiting to send this thing out.
5 to 15 seconds away from
that.
tragedy.
Be lost in September. Because nothing ever happens. Give it happens.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. I forget.
Yep. I say anytime there's like a mic around, you should be quiet, and I do the opposite.
talking, check, check, check.
It's a new,
Waiting
it's
for
a new
Mayor
thing though,
Nichols
like.
for press conference about topics. Standing by. check real quick?
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Oh, sure.
Kind of like that if I'm not in y'all's way.
Alright, cool. Sorry. Yeah, we didn't bring our fancy little
Yeah, well,
you know. Today was not the day.
You guys ready?
put my foot here.
Yeah.
Yep.
We were
Cool.
rolling.
Well, I'll just start by saying that was really pretty pleased with the conversation. That at least I was up here watching a little bit. We're really excited about this opportunity to take what I think is the most significant step in our efforts to end homelessness here in this community since I've been in office. A lot of credit to Emily Hall, our senior advisor on homelessness, and a lot of other partners. But I'm very, very excited about this big step. As I look at the numbers from the point in time count, there's about 496 people who live on the streets, so these are unsheltered homeless folks. With the efforts that we have to move folks out of the shelters who have jobs, who we can help support and move some of those folks in, we can address that issue in the next 9 months. Putting about a 60% dent in it. So it's a big step for us here in Tulsa. Obviously based on best practices, it's worked in a lot of other places, but it is intensive work. And we're going to have a lot of successes, and we're going to learn a lot. And we're going to continue to work that. As we said before, when we came to office, the goal was to get to functional zero by 2030. I think this really puts us on that pathway to getting there. And so I'm very pleased with the conversation downstairs and support of the counselors. We're excited. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
You've said yourself that Tulsa's kind of neglected homelessness before you came into office, and maybe some things have fell through the cracks or just fell through. What makes you think this plan's going to have some staying power?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I would just say, like, neglect is the word I would probably use. I will say that this issue grew over time, and there wasn't really good ways in which the city was investing because we're learning a lot. But that makes Tulsa like just about every other major American city. If you look at the numbers, there's probably only a couple where you say, "Oh, that's a great model," but we're talking, maybe 10 great examples out of however many cities we have across the country. And so, I think Tulsa, we've been trying to figure out where to go for a long time now. It was the reason why I think what was different about this administration is we do have somebody like Emily Hall who wakes up every day working with partners, thinking about the best strategies to get there. This is one of many things, though, right? This is a significant one, and I think what we are learning, though, is we're learning from a lot of other cities who have been trying things. And so those 10 great cities that have been there, or whatever that number is, this is us taking big steps in that direction, using folks from Tulsa to solve what is a Tulsa problem, based on the best data and information that we have. So I'm very excited about that, and I think this is an approach that takes full commitment, and so it's fully committed to an approach, and that's what we're doing.
This is a pilot program. How will you determine if you want to continue this, or?
Yeah, it'll be purely based on outcomes. I think what you heard downstairs is, it's kind of putting folks on a 12-month track to become self-sustaining, and that's our goal, right? And so to the extent that works, we want to continue it. We want to double down. I think citizens would support us in figuring out ways budgetarily on how we do that. Where we have challenges, I think it's working through those challenges. We still have a need for additional pieces. We still have a need for additional shelter space, for example. We're getting ready to spend a significant amount of money on affordable housing because we know that still remains a need. So this is just one of many things that we're going to be doing. I fully believe in the success, but I also know there's going to be a ton of things we're going to have to learn, like I said. The goal is getting to better outcomes. To the extent that we do that, we'll continue to invest in it.
And success means after that 12-month plan, whether people can sustain their rent.
I think initially success is how close are we to that 300 number in 9 months of folks being housed, and then from there, are folks meeting the benchmarks over the course of that 12 months? I think you heard Emily say downstairs earlier, some people it won't be 12 months. Some people will be a shorter period than that. For those 300 folks who we're going to house, did their outcomes get better? Are they able to live kind of self-sustainably? Are we able to serve them well? And there's a ton of metrics that we'll use, but it'll all be based on data. There was somebody before who said their motto was, "In God we trust," and everybody else bring data. And so we'll make sure that data is a big part of what we do and how we evaluate success.
If this initiative passes on the 20th, what all programs and services will become available to help with this model?
Well, I mean, I think the goal, obviously, the top line is to get people housed. And then You heard from Mark Smith and you heard from Beth. There's a number of service providers that meet the individual need of the person. So it's really about meeting people's needs. So if you think about it, this is not a cookie cutter type of a program. There's a lot of consistency and a goal of initially helping folks get housed. But the core of it, though, is putting the person at the center and understanding what do they need to put them on the pathway to success. So the programmatic pieces that exist in this community being deployed in a way that we're focused on outcomes for this population of folks, I think you'll see a number of things that will be deployed, and some of which we're talking about downstairs, if I'm not mistaken.
Does that 9-month clock to house those 300 people start on the August 20th vote, or is that further out?
I think we'll be judging success probably, for me, internally, probably September 1 would be a day where I'd be thinking about we ought to be getting going. We can't get into contracting or anything like that until the money's appropriated. And so once that happens, we'll be really aggressive. So for me, I'm thinking, September 1 is where we're at the starting line, and we'd be judging back from there.
Mayor, what prompted the shift from using the funds for the residential care center to?
I don't think that there was, was there
anything?
Yeah, no, well, I think the reality is since we started, we've been trying to figure out how to do something like this from the very beginning. I think the residential care facility getting up and going has just lagged for so long. The question you got to ask yourself, if we have dollars that are sitting there, what's the best way to use the dollars that we have available? Because we're having to make decisions on the same dollars. And I think this was just a better strategy for getting to where we wanted to get. The last 8 months, we've been working through that, though. So, I would say the last 8 months of us being in office evaluating what was the best step to take when is probably what got us here. I wouldn't say there's any one individual thing that fed to that decision making.
Have you made any headway on the winter shelter, a place? We are still very much committed to it. I don't have anything new to report yet, Okay.
but I guess I have some. You're pretty good though, so I bet as soon as I do, I'll get a question from you wondering how you knew about it.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, we hope to have some additional information. We're still committed to this year in the winter months having a space there for folks. As you remember, and you were great to cover. You all were very great to cover. Really the effort that was put forth to house about 1,400 people in a very short amount of time. We don't want to scramble like that again this year. We want to make sure there's a reliable, consistent place for people to go. It's still a commitment that we have. We have some things to work out, though, on what that location, where it will be, what it will look like, and how many people will be able to house in.
For Tulsans out there that may be living paycheck to paycheck or are right now facing the inevitable that they can't keep their house or they can't pay their electric bill right now because electric bills for elderly are going through the roof. What's the message from City Hall?
For those folks, they're going through a lot of what a number of folks are going through. We are, I believe, still in the top 15 in evictions across the country. Both Emily Hall, who's the senior advisor on homelessness, and Gene Bullmash on the housing side are working to stand up an eviction mitigation group to think about, the challenges with housing expenses. The reality is one of the challenges that we have here is, almost 50% of the population is cost burdened by housing costs, and it's something we're thinking about a lot. For us right now, the focus is on making sure that we address this issue of homelessness and take a aggressive step toward that. We obviously are constantly thinking about ways we can support citizens in everything that we do every day, including the work that we do with the Financial Empowerment Center. So if folks are struggling, I encourage them to reach out to the city. We have resources we can connect them to. But every decision we make up here, we keep in mind the fact that folks, some folks are really struggling to get by. I'm not that far past that myself. I have a 17-year-old kid, and there's been a number of times as a parent that it's been tight. That if I'd have lost a job, I'd probably be in that number of 300 looking for somewhere to live. So we think about that in everything that we do.
With that said, eviction court, sometimes people don't know the loops and hoops and where these big apartment complexes know how to quickly run the system.
Yep.
And then, most Tulsans don't even know that the eviction court is over in juvenile hall. Where most people can't even see the process happen.
Yeah.
The process, should it be changed and should it be different rather than people being basically side-smacked by not understanding the process? Because I think there's an education level.
Yeah, I think there's 100% the need for additional education. Some of that has been going on right now. I know we have partners at Impact Tulsa, for example, that even prior to me coming into office have been working with a lot of folks who have been on the eviction docket. I think there was a number I heard that 46% of them didn't even know they were on the eviction docket. And so part of it is education, part of it is working with landlords. There is a need at times to help people get through a tough spot so they don't end up on the streets. So that eviction mitigation coalition is going to include landlords, people are renting, service providers. So we're thinking about all the ins and outs of it because the goal is that if we can slow down the rate of people even showing up in eviction court, we can absolutely slow evictions. And for us, it continues to be something that we're focused on even when we think about children and youth. I've named the stat a number of times that the kids who have been evicted, those families, those kids are 50% of them are chronically absent after the first month and 70% after the first year. And so we think about it even from an academic standpoint. So it's something we're taking very seriously, whether you're a senior citizen or whether you're getting started with young people in your home. And sometimes it's both. We have a lot of grandparents trying to raise young people. So that eviction mitigation council is really focused on bringing all the players to the table and figuring out what do we have to do from an education and a policy standpoint to advise the city so we're making really good decisions when it comes to that particular issue.
You maybe should make it a general example, but are there any cities that stick out to you in their model that you would like to follow?
There's a number. I mean, like I'm not sure there would be one city that said does everything right, but there are a number of them that have had really good examples of being successful at things like this. Denver, Colorado is one. Houston, Texas is another. And what's interesting, if you look at those cities, you're not going to go to Houston or Denver and not see anybody who's unhoused. You're still going to see portions of that, but the strategies do work. The reality, though, is that they're also expensive. They're resource intensive. And so we're trying to find the good news. The good thing about being where we are right now is we've learned as much as we possibly can from those models. So hopefully it's a little bit more economical for us to do these things. But when you commit to strategies, you have to fully commit to them. And so to the extent that this $6 million helps us get to the goals that we've established, there's going to be a real focus on figuring out ways in which we have to continue to invest to address the issue of homelessness in this community.
Would you say that's your number one priority right now?
Always has been. What's funny about that?
It always has been.
Yeah.
It has been your priority. That's why it's such an important issue.
Yeah.
Also, because you're looking at balance, you're also looking at the complexity of this issue.
Sure.
So you have now, the tensions kind of got a little high maybe in the last few weeks. Businesses were coming forward. I went to a meeting today where there were businesses that were concerned. How can you talk to the other part of the other Tulsans that are also concerned about the people who are unhoused, but it's also impacting them? What kind of managing expectations for them, telling them about your processes for doing this?
Yeah, I mean, like we try to be as transparent as possible. I mean, I think the big thing is, and there's been times along this track, as Kevin asked about the residential care facility. We've gone down that track, evaluated was that the best way for us to go. And I'm not saying it's a bad way to go. It's just as we think about what's going to get us the most impact for the $6 million. I think it's been the case with what we were potentially going to do at New Block Park, which we're not pursuing that anymore. But that was just something we were considering, and it kind of blew up a little bit. I think there's a really good thing about so many people being passionate about this issue, because it means that we all understand this community. This is something that we have to address. The flip side of it is, anytime it pops up, people get very energized about it one way or the other, and so we've been trying to strike that balance, right, between how transparent can we be before we start announcing things so that folks don't jump to conclusions. I think there's still so many misconceptions about what it means to have a shelter or transitional living or a person who's previously unhoused in your neighborhood or whatever the case may be. And so part of it's been like, how do we make sure we're striking that balance? I think that folks are really counting on us to get it right. I also would say that it's going to take all of us to do it. And so I get that if you look at any one thing in a vacuum, people always say, well, that's not going to solve the issue. It's true. One thing alone is not going to solve the issue. And so for us, even though, there's some lag as we're going through plans where, you don't invite everybody to every meeting, I do think, as I said before, as we think about the data and the analytics around what kind of impact we're having, that is where we want to have the transparency and people understanding how are we beginning to mitigate the things that aren't going well, and how are we making sure we're investing in things that are going well. So how do we scale up the good, And how do we begin to change course on the bad is something that we will want to engage folks in a little better than maybe we have to this point.
So enforcement of the existing laws plus enforcement like in neighborhoods and just having more patrols was part of that?
Well, yeah, so I mean, I guess the guiding principle for us on this particular issue is that we have an obligation to provide for alternatives for people. Something that I don't think we have particularly done a good job of as a city for a very, very long time. And so this is not criticizing anybody who came before me. This is a dynamic issue that kind of stuck on a lot, but I think that's true for, as I said, so many cities across the country. So our guiding principle has been, once we get to a place where we have found alternatives for folks, then we have to get aggressive in making sure we're connecting people to those alternatives. I think there's a couple of things I think about in that case. One, there is a real public safety issue that exists, and I think, we would be lying if we pretended like that wasn't true. It doesn't mean that folks who are in housing are inherently, criminals or anything. That does not mean that at all, but that is true. And then I think the other part about this is, I would say for me, from my own kind of, moral kind of compass, folks sleeping outside is not a good idea. It's not safe for them, for the individual. It's not good for this community. I don't think it's a compassionate way to be. I think us making the investments that provide the alternative is a much better, better way to go. And that's going to take some time, but you will see us become much more aggressive in how we're working with outreach workers to get folks out of encampments and individuals off the streets into better opportunities. We think that's the best way to be.
Sorry, it's kind of all the time. I know I'm rushing you out, Mayor, but
yeah,
that's what we got for right now. If you have questions.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I'm sure there'll be more to come. We obviously, I try to make myself available as much as possible. I do appreciate everybody covering this. This is really important for our community. And like I said, more to come, and you guys take care.
Thank you, Mayor.
Right. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right. This belongs to you.
My cards, go ahead.